Before getting too deep, let's start with Eddie's basics. Summoning him with 2 and 4H lets you move him around before attacking. If you walk back and forth, he'll move with you, but if you crouch and do down forward or backwards, he'll move without you, which is very important for positioning. Once he's summoned, pressing P will do Pierce, which is an advancing double-hitting mid-attack with a gap between the hits. S will do an advancing anti-air I'll call Frog, but the rising hit doesn't hit crouchers. K will do a disjointed set of drills for lockdown, and H will make a shield for you for about 50 frames before doing an attack called Oppose. To be a bit more specific, Eddie won't do the attacks until you let go of these buttons, so we can make better use of them by using negative edge. This will be less common in neutral and much more common for pressure and Oki, but it's important to know this now. With Pierce, like I said, there's a gap, but you can do 236P to do another Pierce to catch mashing on the gap. You can cancel into any of the other Eddie options, including Frog, to catch people trying to jump out of the gap, but you'll need to unsummon or oppose after the Frog lands. Canceling into drills is great on paper since it puts them into block stun long enough to run up for pressure and it keeps Eddie away from mashing range, but it is much slower and easier to avoid than the others. Doing 2 and 4S for Shade will send Eddie towards or even behind them based on spacing, letting you chase down people running away. Sandwiching them in this situation leads to some of Zato's best pressure, so it's good to get a hang on how and where you can send Eddie. It can be good for catching people who take to the air from far away when paired with Frog. But since you're sending Eddie into danger, since he can be hit once he finishes moving, you can cancel into Oppose to keep him a bit more safe, then decide what to do. When it comes to Eddie meter, Pierce is fairly cheap, letting you do it up to 4 times. On the other hand, Oppose takes 100%. However, if you summon Eddie with 2 and 4H before doing Oppose, it will actually cost a little less, letting you unsummon after it ends, but before the gauge runs out. If you clap cancel by doing a 236 input for a different Eddie move or do Shade, it'll also prevent you from using up all your gauge with Oppose, which will be very important for combos and pressure. You can even clap cancel back into Oppose to refresh Eddie protecting you, though there is a gap leaving you vulnerable. Zato has a good 5P that chains into itself, or 6P depending on the range. Since the reward on normal hit is very low, you can try going right into Pierce without worrying about them blocking or getting hit. It's best to use defensively when your larger normals like 5H won't be fast enough, but can also be used offensively after a dash up. On counter hit, you can get a 2k 2D knockdown, but it can be hard to recognize in a match. 2P does reach slightly further than 5P, and on both of them there are 2 timings for hitboxes to come out, one for close, and the further ones hit a few frames later, so be careful. 2K has a consistent timing and reaches about as far as 5P, but doesn't combo into 2D near max range. Doing 2 punches into 2-2H frame traps and spaces you out. Once you get some respect there, you can start adding in Pierce or drills to start pressure. It's important to know that the spacing from where you do 5P will determine if a quick mash would be able to stuff the Pierce or not. Unlike many 5Ps, his focus is more on horizontal range than vertical range, so it's not very effective as an anti-air. Luckily, Zato has one of the best 6Ps in the game. I really can't overstate how often you'll be able to use this move. It has slower startup than normal, but has 8 active frames, nearly half the recovery of many other 6Ps, and slightly longer invul above the knees. Even though the weakness is lows, in order to get into the range to actually hit the recovery frames, the opponent needs to be very precise. It's easy for them to accidentally get too close or be too late to punish. On counter hit, you get to summon Eddie for great Oki, and if you're unsure if they'll get hit or block, just do 2-2H. Since it'll only come out on hit or block, you can always input 2-2H to make sure you get it when you want it. 2S is your farthest range normal poke. When you don't have Eddie gauge, canceling into 2-2H should be the default option. It doesn't have a disjoint, so it can be beaten out by other moves, but it's important for the mid-range, especially since you can cancel into Eddie. Space 2S into Pierce will catch the mashing, but they'll be able to easily jump away. If they start jumping away, that's when you introduce Frog as an option. Or use Shade to sandwich them and start some pressure. And it's not a bad idea to just do unsummon after one hit of Pierce to reset the neutral and keep your Eddie gauge intact. If you see that they're patient after blocking a normal, going right into drills can be a great option, letting you start your turn and run mix-ups quickly. Since the drills are disjointed and Eddie stays back, doing the quick pokes that may have beaten Pierce will lose. However, if they commit to larger normals, then you'll be vulnerable. 5H is the next biggest move, and it's important due to the large disjoint and 9 active frames. With Eddie, you get a full combo on counter hit through Pierce, so it is a useful combo starter. Also, 5H into Pierce is unmashable, so it's the preferred move for them to block over 2S. When you don't have Eddie gauge, it'll be an important keep-out tool, especially using 2-2H to help kill time for him to come back. When you are forcing respect with the disjoint of 5H, Tap Dust becomes a decent option since it has similar range and catches people down backing. 2H is a situational anti-air. It doesn't have any actual anti-air properties, so it can be stuffed, but if you get a counter hit, it can lead to some high damaging combos. This becomes much better when paired with Oppose, making the lack of disjoint problem go away and leads to high reward. It is possible to get this combo without having a pose as well, but requires a bit more manual control. 2-2H is Zato's only projectile not locked behind Eddie. It covers a little past round start distance, and it's a good cancel option for SNH normals, but has an insane 32 active frames, so it locks down the mid-range for a long time. As with many other projectiles, it loses to IED or jump-ins, so don't get too comfortable throwing this out without a reason. 2-2H PRC is probably the best use of meter in neutral. Shade not only sends Eddie out, but also reflects projectiles starting frame 3, which can be a very useful tool, especially for protecting Eddie. Another unique thing about Zato is his air movement. Instead of a double jump, he has an 8-way air dash that lets him control his momentum. So even if you air dash backwards, you can hover forwards. From just an air dash forwards, you can float back to where you started, hover at the normal distance to bait anti-airs, or even fast fall to fake out doing a jump attack and going low. I highly recommend messing around with this flight using a direction and the dash macro to commit to an air dash and see all the different places you can land. When mastered, you'll have extreme precision on landing where you want. And after that, add in air FD breaks for even more control. Super Jump JD also helps you reposition and is especially good for getting out of the corner. Doing JD Fast RC JK carries the momentum to reset neutral quickly. IED JH is a great approach tool, especially since JH is active for 14 frames, giving a large window for it to connect. This also gives you the ability to mix up your air movement into JH since you have so much time. Super Jump back, down, forward, air dash JH gives a nice low-hitting JH, but you have to super jump, otherwise you'll land before it comes out. Canceling into JH from an air dash lets you carry the momentum really well, giving another way to move around the screen quickly. JP is also a good space control tool. After a normal jump into it, you can still fit in a bit of movement before you land. The reward is basically non-existent, but keeping control over the space you want makes it worth it, especially in the corner. IED or Super Jump IED JP can be a decent approach tool as well. Retreating JP can stuff people trying to run up, but JH also works well here. I find JP to be best when I react to my opponent jumping forward, and so I dash jump air to air with JP. Finally, when Eddie is gone, use 6P and 5H OSing into 2-2H, fly around to kill time, use the precision and momentum carrying options to stay unpredictable, and use JH and JP to control space. Thank you for watching.